You're not an empath anymore. This is what you become. If that sentence makes you feel defensive or confused, stay with me, because I'm not saying you lose your sensitivity. I'm saying the version of empath you've been living as is often a survival role. And when you heal, you don't become colder. You become something most people don't recognize at first. In the next minute, I'm going to name the biggest lie empaths were taught about their gift, and why healing can feel like you're becoming a different person. And halfway through, I'll give you one clear action step that helps you move from emotional absorbing to emotional sovereignty without shutting your heart down. What a healed empath actually becomes is not what you think. And once you see it, you'll stop calling your old patterns who you are. A lot of people use the word empath to mean I feel deeply. But many people who call themselves empaths are really describing something else. They're describing hyper-attunement. They're describing scanning. They're describing the habit of reading microsignals to keep themselves safe. They're describing the reflex to manage other people's emotions so they don't get abandoned, blamed, or punished. That's not a personality trait. That's a nervous system strategy. When you grow up in an environment where moods were unpredictable, you learn to notice everything. You learn the difference between a safe silence and a dangerous silence. You learn what a tight jaw means, what a slammed drawer means, what a fine that isn't fine means. So later, you walk into adult rooms and you pick up what others miss. You call it intuition. Sometimes it is, but often it's simply practice. You got trained. And because you're good at it, you start building your identity around it. I'm the one who understands. I'm the one who feels what others feel. I'm the one who can sense energy. And then, without realizing it, you start confusing awareness with responsibility. You don't just notice the tension. You feel obligated to fix it. You don't just sense someone's sadness. You start carrying it. You don't just see the conflict coming. You start adjusting yourself to prevent it. That's the unhealed empath. Not weak, not broken, over-functioning, over-adapting, over-reading, and quietly disappearing. So what happens when you heal? The first thing is unsettling. You stop absorbing, and people misinterpret that as cold, because when you stop absorbing, you stop reacting to everything. You stop rushing to soothe. You stop explaining yourself endlessly. You stop offering emotional labor as proof of love. You stop translating other people's feelings for them. And suddenly, the people who relied on you to regulate the room feel your absence. They may say, you changed. They may say, you don't care like you used to. They may say, you're distant. But what's actually happening is this. You're no longer available for emotional extraction. A healed empath does not become insensitive. A healed empath becomes self-contained, not closed, contained. There's a huge difference. Closed means numb. Contained means grounded. Contained means you can feel without drowning. You can care without collapsing. You can be present without performing. And this is the part most people don't expect. A healed empath becomes less impressed by intensity, because unhealed empathy is often attracted to intensity. The dramatic story, the crisis, the emotional urgency, the only you understand me type of connection. It feels like depth, but it's often dysregulation. Healing changes what your body calls love. A healed empath starts craving calm, not boring, calm. You start choosing relationships that feel steady instead of addictive. You start trusting consistency over chemistry. You start realizing that peace is not a lack of passion. It's a sign that your nervous system isn't fighting for survival. This is why healing can feel like you're becoming a different person. Your old self was trained to equate closeness with managing. Your healed self learns that closeness can include boundaries. Your old self believed that being good meant being available. Your healed self learns that being loving includes limits. Your old self thought compassion meant understanding everyone. Your healed self learns that compassion also includes discernment. Now, here's a sharp truth. Many unhealed empaths are not actually too kind. They're afraid of conflict, afraid of rejection, afraid of being misunderstood. So they keep explaining. They keep softening their knees. They keep making themselves easy to be around, and they call it empathy. But healing changes the direction of your empathy. Instead of empathy flowing outward first, it flows inward first. You start empathizing with yourself, with your body, with your fatigue, with your truth. And that's why a healed empath often becomes quieter, not because they have less to say, because they have less to prove. They stop oversharing to be understood. They stop over-explaining to be accepted. They stop trying to convince people they're good. And one day you notice something surprising. The people who truly respect you get closer. The people who only benefited from you get angry. That's not a tragedy. That's a filter. This is where most empaths get stuck, so listen carefully. When you begin to heal, guilt will show up. Because guilt is the old leash. Guilt is the feeling that says, if I don't overgive, I'm selfish. If I don't fix, I'm cruel. If I don't carry them, I'm abandoning them. But guilt isn't always a moral signal. Sometimes guilt is just withdrawal from a lifelong pattern. You're withdrawing from over-responsibility. You're withdrawing from people-pleasing. You're withdrawing from emotional labor addiction. So, if you're healing and you feel guilty, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It often means you're finally doing something different. Now let's answer the question directly. What does a healed empath actually become? They become emotionally sovereign. That's the word. Sovereign. A sovereign person can feel deeply without being controlled by what they feel. They can witness pain without rushing to rescue. They can hear someone's sadness without making it their job to remove it. They can be in a room with tension and not offer their nervous system as payment. They become someone who no longer confuses love with self-abandonment. And here's the part that might surprise you. A healed empath becomes harder to manipulate, not because they're suspicious, because they're honest with themselves. Manipulation works best when you doubt your own perception, when you're always asking, maybe it's me, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I misunderstood. Healing gives you something simple and powerful. You stop gaslighting yourself. You start trusting your body's signals. If you feel consistently drained, you don't argue with it. If your boundaries create drama, you don't negotiate your worth. If their kindness disappears when you stop giving, you stop calling it love. You call it access, and you leave. This is the mid-video loop I promised earlier, and it's important. You might be thinking, okay, but how do I know if I'm healing or just shutting down? Here's the difference. Shutting down feels numb and disconnected. Healing feels clear and present. Shutting down feels like you can't feel anything. Healing feels like you can feel, but you don't spiral. Shutting down feels like walls. Healing feels like boundaries. And boundaries don't block love. They block chaos. Now here is your one clear action step, and it's intentionally simple. For the next 7 days, stop answering other people's emotions first. Answer your body first. Before you reply to a message, before you explain, before you soothe, before you fix. Take one slow breath and ask one question. What am I feeling in my body right now? Tightness? Pressure? Heat? Numbness? Restlessness? Then ask the second question. What do I need to stay regulated? Maybe you need space. Maybe you need time. Maybe you need to say no. Maybe you need to stop explaining. Then respond from that place. Not from guilt, not from fear, from regulation. This one practice quietly changes everything because it breaks the empath's oldest reflex, the reflex to abandon yourself to manage someone else. And if you do this for 7 days, you'll start noticing something. You'll still be kind, but you won't be available for chaos. You'll still care, but you won't carry. You'll still love, but you won't lose yourself. Now let's bring it back to the thumbnail. You're not an empath anymore. This is what you become. You become the person you were before you learned to overfunction. You become calm, not numb, clear, not cruel, open, not porous, present, not performing. You become someone who can sense a room without becoming responsible for the room. And that's why healed empaths often look different to people who knew them before. Because the old version of you was predictable. The old version of you could be guilted. The old version of you could be pulled into fixing. The old version of you could be used. The healed version of you is still compassionate, but not available for extraction, and that changes everything. Here's the fast recap. Unhealed empath is often a survival identity built on scanning, over-responsibility, and self-abandonment. Healed empath is emotional sovereignty, feeling deeply with boundaries, choosing calm, trusting your body, and refusing to confuse love with overgiving. Your action step is 1 breath, 1 body check, 1 regulated response for 7 days. And if you want to go deeper, the next video you should watch is the one about the silent moment an empath detaches forever, because it explains what happens when you keep absorbing until your system finally says enough.